So ready to put on our family therapist hats and dive into some seriously juicy drama?
Always up for a little armchair psychology.
Perfect. Because today we are dissecting a scene from Minnie Brănescu's play, Family.EXE.
Oh, I love this play. It's like a masterclass in hidden tensions, you know? Just watching these seemingly normal family gatherings explode, you really get a sense of all that unspoken baggage and resentment bubbling under the surface.
Right, like 1 minute everyone's making small talk and the next, bam, total emotional explosion. And in this scene, it all starts with a car accident.
Well, not in the way you'd think, though. The accident itself is not like a major event physically. It's more of a catalyst, you know? A symbol of Lawrence's sense of isolation within his own family.
Because of their reactions or lack thereof.
Exactly. Think about it. He calls each person 3 times. His wife, his sister, mother, best friend. Nobody picks up.
3 times. That's
Yeah.
dot intense. I get maybe missing a call once, especially if you don't recognize the number, but 3 times after a car accident.
Right. By that third unanswered call, it becomes less about missing a call and more about a pattern of behavior. This tiny incident cracks open a Pandora's box of issues. We start to understand everyone's priorities, or lack thereof, just from how they react or don't react to Laurentia.
Okay, so let's break it down. Let's start with Andrea, his wife. You'd think she'd be the first one by his side, right?
I think. But does she drop everything and rush to be with him? No. Her first reaction is to grill him, question him. Why didn't you tell me about the accident sooner? What were you even doing in Brace-Off?
Which, okay, fair questions later, but he was visiting a client, right? Pretty normal for his job. He travels a lot for work.
Exactly. It's not out of the ordinary. But then Andrea uses that at the gym excuse. Not just for the day of the accident, but for other times she hasn't answered his calls.
That feels very deliberate, like she's trying to downplay his feelings,
Yeah.
Or maybe it's her own resentment bubbling to the surface.
It makes you wonder, right? Is she being intentionally dismissive, or is it just a portrait of a marriage that's lost its spark? Either way, it definitely feeds into that whole confirmation bias phenomenon.
Oh, totally. It's like that saying, seeing what you want to see, hearing what you want to hear.
Right. Confirmation bias isn't just some abstract psych term. We see it every day. It's that feeling when you're so sure you're right about something, you only see the evidence that supports it. Anything that contradicts your view is like instantly invisible. And that's Laurentiu in a nutshell.
He's laser focused on finding something, anything, to confirm his suspicions about Andrea and Toby.
And when those photos surface, game over.
From Toby's jealous ex, Paula.
Oh, Paula, she really knows how to stir the pot. But you're right, those photos, while you're suggestive, they don't exactly show everything.
It's clever of Brănescu to write it that way, because we're doing exactly what Laurentia's doing, analyzing every detail, trying to decide for ourselves, are these photos proof of an affair or just a symptom of his paranoia?
Right. It forces us, the audience, to be active participants in uncovering the truth, just like Laurentia. And trust me, as the play goes on, that paranoia, it's not just about Andrea. He starts turning on everyone.
Really?
Oh, yeah. His wife, Toby, his own mother, sister, even his sister's husband. No one is safe from his accusations. He's convinced they're all taking advantage of his generosity while giving him nothing in return, emotionally speaking at least.
Which brings us to another big theme. The role of money in this family. It's like their wealth is a wall between them, preventing any real intimacy.
Totally. It's sad, actually. He's trying to buy their love, and when that doesn't work, he weaponizes his money to try and control them. Like, look at his relationship with his sister Polixenia.
Oh, that's a good one. Classic sibling rivalry, but with a big financial power imbalance thrown in.
Exactly. She's totally dependent on his financial support, but she also resents him for it, throws sarcastic jabs, belittles his job.
And don't even get me started on her reaction to the accident.
Yeah.
But you didn't die, she says. It's like she's intentionally trying to make him feel small.
Right. So again, we see a pattern of behavior. This isn't just about one car accident. This is about years of unspoken issues and resentment. It makes you wonder, what's the root of that coldness? Is it a defense mechanism because she relies on him? Or is there something deeper there, maybe a rivalry that started way before the play even begins?
Like those unanswered calls, it hints at a much bigger story.
Exactly. And that's what makes Family.EXE so brilliant. It forces us to ask, how well do we really know our own families? And what about those unspoken expectations we bring to our relationships? How do those shape how we interact, for better or worse?
Heavy stuff. Speaking of complicated family members, can we talk about Laurentia's mother for a sec? On the surface, she seems caring, concerned about him. But there's something off.
Oh, absolutely. She's like the queen of passive aggression. She dotes on him one minute, then totally undermines his feelings the next. It's like she doesn't want him to grow up, to be independent.
And then there's her relationship with Marion, her much younger boyfriend, which must be a thorn in Lawrence's
Oh,
side.
yeah, Laurent is not a fan. He sees Marion as just another freeloader, someone else his mom is choosing over him.
Okay, so clearly Marion is clueless to the family drama. The guy seems more concerned with snacks than anything else going on.
Right, he's almost a caricature of a clueless partner. He does add a layer of, shall we say, absurdity to the whole thing, though.
True. But he also emphasizes how much Laurentiu feels used, like everyone's just after his money. It all just adds fuel to the fire.
Definitely. Sometimes those less developed characters end up being the most important, symbolically speaking, you know?
They hold up a mirror to the main characters for sure. Speaking of important characters, let's talk about Toby, because he's in quite the predicament. I almost feel bad for the guy.
Right. He really is caught in the middle of this mess between his best friend and, well, the woman he's having an affair with.
Because he does care about them both. Or at least that's what he says.
You can see the conflict there. He's trying to defend himself and Andrea, but he also knows he hurt Laurentiu. He tries to justify it, though, blames his breakup, his own insecurities.
He even blames a back injury at one point.
Right. Anything to get himself off the hook. Classic deflection tactic. It wasn't me, it was her. She pursued me.
The oldest trick in the book. And let's be real, it rarely works.
Nope. And in the end, he does what any good coward would do. He bolts. Leaves Andrea to deal with the fallout on her own.
Which, let's be honest, was inevitable from the moment those photos showed up.
Oh, totally. And speaking of Andrea, we have to talk about her confession because it is a doozy. She drops a bomb, claiming she's in love with Toby, that the affair was more than just a fling, and that she's been unhappy with Laurentiu for years.
Which, again, makes you wonder, how much of this is real and how much is a reaction to her own unhappiness? Is she really in love with Toby, or is this revenge for feeling neglected by Laurentiu all these years?
Such a good question, and unfortunately, it's one that the play doesn't answer directly, so we're left to ponder it ourselves.
It's wild, right? She really throws a wrench into the whole thing. But you know what else gets me? All those little details, like the unanswered calls, or even that whole green motif that keeps popping up. They seem so random at first, but in the context of the play.
Oh, it's brilliant what Brănescu does.
Yeah.
Each detail is like a breadcrumb, leading us deeper and deeper into this family's mess.
Right, and that color green, it's almost like its own character, isn't it? Like every time it's mentioned, the tension just goes up a notch.
For sure. It's not just a color in this play, it's a visual cue, a symbol. Green, with all those traditional associations, envy, betrayal, it just adds to the feeling of suspicion that hangs over everything.
Exactly. Like, whenever Andre is wearing green, Laurentia's paranoia goes through the roof. It's like the color itself is foreshadowing her betrayal.
Totally. And those unanswered calls, another brilliant touch. They're more than just missed connections. They represent a pattern of neglect. This family is all out of sync, emotionally speaking.
It's true, and it's not just his family, right? Laurentia keeps bringing up other examples. That car accident Toby had, the train derailment in England, even people starving in North Korea. Yeah, it's a bit much, honestly.
Right. It's like he's trying to justify his feelings, saying, see, even when bad things happen, no one cares as much as I do.
Yeah, but it kind of backfires. It just makes him seem even more self-centered. Instead of focusing on his own pain, he should be there for Andrea, right?
Yeah. Exactly. He's so focused on his own need for validation that he loses sight of the bigger picture. And speaking of needing validation, can we talk about his relationship with his mother for a minute? That's a whole other layer of this drama.
Oh, for sure. On the surface, she seems like the caring mom, always there with a hug. But underneath,
it's all manipulation and control. She constantly downplays his feelings, steers the conversation back to herself. Remember when he's telling her about the accident and she's more worried about getting more wine?
oh my gosh, yes. And every time she does try to comfort him, there's always a dig in there somewhere, like when she brushes off his outburst as a panic attack.
It's almost like she's gaslighting him, making him question his own sanity. And don't even get me started on Marion, the boyfriend.
Oh, Marion. He is something else. Is he really that oblivious to everything going on?
It's hard to tell if he's playing dumb, but he definitely adds a layer of surrealness to the whole thing. Like, here's this family imploding, and he's worried about snacks.
He's like a walking, talking symbol of how little they all understand each other.
And of how much Laurentiu feels like he's being taken advantage of. It just feeds that resentment.
Yeah.
But speaking of complicated relationships, Laurentiu and his sister, Polixenia, are a whole other story.
Oh, yeah, there's so much history there. You can just feel the sibling rivalry.
Uh,
And then you factor in the money.
right, because he's supporting her financially, paying for pretty much everything,
Right.
her house, car, even her vacations.
Which, good for him for helping her out. But at the same time, I get it. He probably expects some appreciation in return, some kind of emotional support.
Totally. He craves that reciprocity, that feeling of, we're in this together. And when he doesn't get it, the resentment just festers.
It's like he can buy her a house, but he can't buy her love.
Exactly. And what's heartbreaking is that deep down, I think they do care about each other. They've just never learned how to express it in a healthy way.
It makes you wonder what their childhood was like, right? What kind of patterns were established back then?
Totally. It's like there's this whole other play happening off stage, the story of their childhood, which is shaping everything we see in the present.
And then there's Anton, Polixenia's husband. Poor Anton. He tries so hard to fit in.
He's like the family punching bag, always saying the wrong thing at the wrong time.
But he has his moments. I'm thinking about that scene where Laurentiu makes fun of his paintings, the abstract ones Anton's so proud of.
Oh, yeah, that's a good scene.
Instead of backing down, Anton defends his work. For once, he stands up for himself.
He does. And he even calls Laurentiu out, pointing out that at least he creates something while Laurentiu just throws money around, which, ouch.
Right. Like, you can have all the money in the world, but you'll never have my passion.
It's a small victory, but it shows that even though Anton is financially dependent on Laurentiu, he still has his own sense of self-worth.
It's a good reminder that money can't buy everything.
Exactly. And it kind of makes you wonder, what does Laurentiu really want from his family? Is it love, respect, or is he just trying to control everyone and everything?
Maybe a bit of both. It's like he's trying to buy their love because he doesn't know how to ask for it directly. Like, with those unanswered calls, instead of saying, hey, I had a scary experience, I need you, he gets hung up on this one detail, this symbol of his perceived neglect.
Right. He doesn't know how to express vulnerability, so he defaults to anger and blame. It's a defense mechanism, a way to protect himself from getting hurt.
And that's got to be exhausting.
Totally. And it's not very effective, is it? Because the more he pushes, the further everyone pulls away.
It's sad, really. He's got all this money, all this stuff, but it doesn't seem to bring him any closer to what he actually craves,
It's like that old saying, you can't buy happiness. Except in Laurentius' case, it's more like you can't buy love.
Or family, or genuine connection.
And speaking of which, we need to address the elephant in the room, Andrea's confession. That's where all this tension has been building, right?
It's the climax of the whole play, and it doesn't disappoint. But it's interesting, right? It's not a big, dramatic screaming match. It's this quiet explosion, almost more unsettling that way.
Totally agree. And it all hinges on those photographs from Paula. Talk about perfect timing. The way those photos just drop into the middle of everything.
It's such a classic dramatic device, that sudden reveal that changes everything.
It shows how even the smallest actions by seemingly insignificant characters can have these huge ripple effects. Like Paula throws this grenade into their lives and boom!
Exactly. And Laurentiu, who's already on edge because he feels so unseen by his family, he just crumbles.
It's honestly heartbreaking to watch. The way he analyzes those photos, like he can somehow extract the truth from them if he just stares long enough.
He's looking for proof, for validation, for something to make sense of the chaos. But it's like, the more he looks, the less clear everything becomes.
Exactly. His confirmation bias is in overdrive now. He's so convinced Andrea's cheating that he can't see any other possible explanation for her behavior.
And it's not just directed at Andrea, right? His anger spills over onto everyone. Toby, his mom, Polixenia, even poor Anton.
He's desperate to regain control, but it backfires spectacularly. The angrier he gets, the further everyone pulls away. It's like he's pushing them all away with both hands.
So the scene ends with Laurentiu completely alone. His family has left. His illusions are shattered. It's a bleak picture, for sure, but would you say it's completely hopeless?
That's the thing about hitting rock bottom, right? Sometimes it's the only way to truly start over.
To rebuild, to confront those unhealthy patterns and actually choose something different.
Exactly. Now, does Family.exe offer easy solutions? Nope, but it stays with you long after you've finished it. It's like Brănescu is holding up a mirror to our own lives, asking us to consider what would we do in that situation.
It's a good reminder that family dynamics are complicated. There's rarely a clear right or wrong, a hero or villain.
We all have our flaws, right? and families often magnify those flaws. But even within that messiness, there's always the potential for growth, for forgiveness, for understanding.
As long as we're willing to do the work.
Exactly. Family.exe encourages us to take a good, hard look at our own families. What are those unspoken expectations, those resentments we're holding on to?
It's not always easy to face those things, but it's important. And it might even be the key to building stronger, healthy relationships.
Right. It all comes down to honesty, communication, and a whole lot of empathy. Easier said than done, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of art, isn't it? It sparks these conversations, challenges us to see ourselves and our relationships in new ways. And maybe, just maybe, it helps us find a little more compassion for ourselves and the people we love, even when they drive us crazy.
I love that. Compassion. That's a great note to end on.
Me too. Well, this has been quite the deep dive.
It really has.
A huge thanks to everyone for joining us today as we unpacked all the drama, the intrigue, and let's be honest, the sheer dysfunction of Family.exe.
Always a pleasure. Until next time.
Until next time.